experiences, as young people growing up here in the city of Long Beach. And I'll be moderating this talk with some of our VoiceWaves Youth Reporters. You might have seen them at some point out in the streets, covering stuff or being interviewed. Their perspective, usually they're out there getting yours, right? I'm just going to have them introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about them, first name, last name, kind of what part of Long Beach they're coming from. If you don't mind getting us started, let the people know who you are.
Hola, my name's Ceferino Martirez. My friends call me Alvin.
Hi, I'm Briana. I'm a youth reporter at VoiceWaves.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Nick Eismann, and I'm with VoiceWaves as well.
Okay. And where are we all coming from? Like, what part of Long Beach are we all coming from? I'm coming from the north side. What about you, Alvin?
I'm from the west side, born and raised.
Okay.
I'm also coming from the west side.
Yeah, Belmont Shore for me.
Nice. So then, as you can see, we got kind of like I'd say like a pretty good diversity, right, of like different spots in Long Beach. So everyone's experience growing up here might be a little different. So, if we could just talk about that, like what the environment where you grew up was like, right? Like where the schools you were going to, where you've been growing up at home, like what's it like where you're from?
Well, I grew up in the west side. I grew up around the very Hispanic community, right? I went to school in Signal Hill, and then I went to school in the west side again in Cabrillo. For me, my life was it wasn't very orthodox, right? I lived under extreme poverty. I know my family raised me up like to be very self-sufficient. My grandpa, while how strict he was, he definitely tried to raise us into this kind of like, you have to rely on yourself and no one else. But if the community was there, you could rely on them if necessary. And that definitely instilled in me this sense of like, self-worth and to like building my own passion in life. And that's definitely how I started doing where I am now in VoiceWaves. So
Yeah. And you've been in the West Side like your whole life, right?
pretty much I was raised there as a kid, grew up there as a teenager. And for me, like, it's definitely been like my life, being around like a very diverse amount of folks, living there, eating there, breathing there, how even though the smoke and the air may not be the best quality, but yeah, it's definitely a life that I've definitely lived. And it's not every day you get to live in a place like that. So
Yeah. What about you, Brianna? What's it been like for you?
Well, I spent most of my childhood in Wilmington, actually, but we would like a part of my and then so it's been like about formative part of
So for me, area, it wasn't really a lot of and stuff like that. And so
Here in Long
biggest part. Stuff like that. So I was like the
producing kind of like, but it's very that doesn't really a lot of my friends is and as a whole, but coming from the west side, there's this sense of like everyone who isn't in my area doesn't seem to notice where I live. I feel like we are like very isolated despite how close we are. And I think that's because of the 710 and how this bridge just indirectly keeps us isolated and keeps us, out of the conversation in Long Beach.
Interesting. Is that like a feeling that y'all have felt where you're from at any point?
The sense of isolationism?
Yeah.
For me, yeah, in a sense, growing up in Belmont Shores and then going downtown, and I went to high school at Pauley, it's two different cultures, essentially. You'd cross, for me, I'd cross over Signal Hill and I'd realize like, wow, like this is a totally different part of town. And so I wouldn't really say like we're isolated from the rest, but it's definitely, like a very clear divide of these two spots where it's like, they're two totally different cultures.
Yeah. Has that been your
Yeah,
experience
similar
too?
to what Nick said, you can see the difference right away, like from different sides. So.
Yeah. I think especially as you start to like things.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's been your. And so I'd use the bus a lot, go from the north side basically all the way down Atlantic and then down 7th. And that was my experience for sure, is you just like start to notice things more and more.
Yeah.
What was it for y'all that kind of like, I guess maybe helped you see things? Was it just getting out there, or like what kind of helped you start to pick up on the differences and maybe even consider like what is it that's shaping the communities? Like, was there anything that kind of like made that happen for y'all?
I'd say for me, a part of it was just going to high school, like in Long Beach Poly, across the city basically, and also, yeah, like just getting out there and like just noticing these different things, right? Like going to downtown Long Beach sometimes, like just to go there and you'd realize like, wow, like this is totally different. So I'd say, yeah, a big factor of it was really just me going out and just getting out of my own area.
Yeah. That's real.
I guess for me, it's that I'm very much someone who likes to travel, and I went to LA, I went to Georgia, I went to Sacramento, and as someone who went to those places coming in, I noticed there's a big difference. Sacramento is way greener than living in Long Beach. In Georgia, things are very different in terms of how culture is. And I think once I went back and I, started, noticing some things in Long Beach that didn't seem, I wouldn't say right or wrong per se, but I started realizing there's a big, massive homeless problem kicking in. Like every single day, as I like walk outside my house, I tend to realize that there's more and more homeless people like living around Long Beach in general, and there's a lot more conversation. I remember in high school, every single year, like people would start bringing up the conversation just suddenly out of like of more homeless folks just generally around the location more and more, because generally students take the bus, and generally that's where a lot of homeless folks tends to reside, right, for food and supplies. And just seeing that popping up more and more, and how that fluctuates, not necessarily in decreasing but increasing, kind of opened up my eyes to like the kind of like subtle horror that tends to embody society, and how we kind of just neglect homeless folks. And definitely as someone that went to Sacramento, where I didn't see a single homeless person, right? It was rare for even me to even spot anything. It was kind of like, yeah, that doesn't seem normal, or that shouldn't be normal, right? Seeing homeless folks in the street, or someone not having a home was apparently normal for some folks. And yeah, it just opened my eyes. So.
Yeah, so I came to Long Beach, like technically like as an outsider. So like a few of these differences, like the homelessness problem and stuff like that, I saw it like just because I wasn't from here originally. But then other things, just once I got settled in here, was also like just going out to other places, and you can see the differences.
Right. And how, you spoke a little bit about like the environment, each of you, of like what it's like where you've been growing up. How do you think that's sort of like shaped like, I guess how you go out in your communities? Like, do you find yourself hanging out there a lot, or like moving elsewhere to go out with friends or just hang out?
Um, while while there is like a really bad, like, I guess, air quality in my area, it sort of has like became normalized in us, right? Like, I know in Cabrillo there'll be days if you're running, from what I've heard, is that you just won't run if there's like a really bad, like, if there's bad air quality, or people see ash, right, coming out. Oh, or I think once in a while, like if a factory explodes, people just see like clouds and they just don't really mind it. They'll just treat it like it's, a Tuesday, right? And for my friends, when we hang out, we generally don't talk about the West Side hanging out. We just kind of like assume like we're gonna go to somewhere like the Pike, or eat at the Korean barbecue place, or generally not the West Side, unfortunately. And I know one of my friends wanted to hang out, and she's a good friend of mine, right? And I told her, "Do you really want to hang out here? Because the air isn't really that good." And the moment I said the air, she just went, "Oh, no, 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 no." And so I was kind of surprised that, as someone who lived in that area, right, that a lot of people don't really know, but they do, but they seem to just have this kind of perplexing kind of like mythology of what the West Side is, that a lot of people from the West are just kind of treating like it's normal. And I think someone from the east part of Long Beach told me like, "Oh, y'all have bad air there?" I'm like, "Yeah, don't you?" And so it's kind of weird when people feel like, again, I bring up that point with isolation. A lot of people in the east side just generally don't know what's going on in the west side. They're like, "Oh yeah, like we just walk in our neighborhood, it's all safe." I'm like, "You guys walk safe?" And so it's like, it's kind of weird. And for me, like, that is life. That is definitely how life for me works in the west side. But apparently, like, when I travel outside, it doesn't seem to be the norm. And for me, while that might be a good thing, and it just feels like, why is this happening in my neighborhood? And that definitely, like, is a problem.
Yeah. What about you guys?
Yeah, similarly, it's just there's always this notion that, oh, I know I'm not living like in the best neighborhood and stuff like that. So we do tend to gravitate more towards downtown, and like Alvin said, like let's go to the Pike and stuff like that. And we're never like, oh yeah, let's stay here.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I'm really blessed to be able to have spots close by where me and my friends could hang out. So, like as of hanging out, we would just go down to Second Street, or they recently put in a new Second and PCH like shopping center, so we would go over there as well. It's a lot. There's a lot more like in the Belmont Shore area. There's a lot more hangout spots, I guess, than what you guys have experienced.
Yeah. And there was something like that stuck out to me in what specifically what you brought up, about going elsewhere. Well, both of y'all brought up really about going elsewhere, right? And it's that kind of like shifts, like, I guess, dollars to like other communities, right? And doesn't bring them into your own, which is kind of pretty tragic in some ways, right? You can't even like participate in your local economy. Like how are y'all going to get jobs where you live, right? That's, I don't know, I find that pretty concerning. And then there's also the point about safety was made. Just that you don't feel safe in your own neighborhoods, right? What kind of factors, like what is it that you think about, I guess, when you feel that way? I don't know if maybe that's how y'all feel, like if you feel safe being around
Oh
that
yeah,
where you are?
I was shocked to hear that, like, for me it's normal to walk around my neighborhood at night, or walk around after sunset and feel a sense of security and safety coming from my neighborhood and where I'm at. And I've definitely been in neighborhoods where I do feel unsafe walking around and unsafe. And I think it's really concerning that people don't want to be in their area, and they feel the need to travel elsewhere and have that burden of like, hey, I want to be with my friends, but I don't want to be, in my part of town. I need to go to the Pike. I need to go to Shoreline Village. I need to go somewhere else. And it's like, it's a very something very alarming,
Yeah. What about, since you brought it up, I'd like to ask, like, I guess what goes through your head? Like, what are the things that maybe might make you feel not so safe besides like the air quality? Is there something else to it, or is it just that?
For me, it's kind of like when I'm walking in the street, or I guess I'm walking in my neighborhood, I generally I have to assume what's the safest direction to like my destination. I know like my parents or even like just generally like my friends or classmates, when they talk about like, yeah, don't walk here at night, it might not be the safest bet. I know one of my friends would always mention how in his part there would be like maybe a there might be a gunshot every now and then, like just nonchalant, just mentioning it. Yo, yeah, like I live in my apartment. Sometimes I'll hear like a gun fire off, like maybe once or two in a week. And for me, in my area, while I don't hear that, right, it's around my neighborhood. In like I live on like the central west side, and let's just say that's happening on the southern west side, right? While that might not be happening where I am kind of at, it is happening perpetually like around me. And so the fact that it is somewhere circling around my general vicinity is something to worry about. And while a lot of the west side generally is safe, there is some caution about like not going to specific side streets or specific parts of the neighborhood because there might be, some problems that could, arise. But generally speaking, I think it's just kind of like, despite there being police, they don't really seem to be doing the job properly, which is kind of weird how my area, which is very heavily policed, like cop cars coming in around town, still doesn't feel safe. It doesn't seem like they're attacking or at least policing like the correct things, and it just turns to a culture where like even the people around that community generally just don't trust the police, or when they do, they just kind of keep their back and keep their I guess keep their mouth shut because they don't want to feel like they're gonna get attacked by them. So I know that's how my family sees it, like that for sure.
Right. What about you, Brianna? Is that like have you had like
Yeah.
a similar feeling?
It's pretty much the same. Yeah, it's just yeah, like police. I've never felt safe in the presence of like the police, and a lot of like my friends and people, like just people I know like from school and stuff. It's like you should go the other way because you never know and stuff like that. And
Right.
I mean, I think you can also add to that just like being a woman and like being out there in my neighborhood. It's just like the intersectionality of it, I guess, just really affects.
Yeah. I'm wondering, since you bring up like friends, right? And as reporters, we go out and talk to a lot of people, a lot of young people at school, but then also people elsewhere, sometimes young, sometimes older. Do you hear about like similar issues, or like what other issues do you hear of specifically from young folks that you talk to, like that are happening in their communities? Like what is like some of the stuff that you hear from community members?
I think I would like to like go on about the policing and the over policing, especially in schools,
Yeah.
and just like the presence of these like the CSOs on campus, and it's like they don't create like a comfortable environment, a safe environment, which is what school's supposed to be,
Right.
and so they're not helping with that really, and a lot of people say that, like a lot of people I've talked to and stuff like that.
Is that a problem like just with the CSOs? Because I've heard there's certainly been a lot of talk about this kind of stuff, right? I know we've had incidents here like in the last year or so. Specifically at schools like Poly was one that was in the news. And then it spurs a lot of conversation about like the culture in schools, like that it does feel that way. Is that just like a CSO problem, or does it go like wider in your experience, like to like teachers or admin or anything like that?
Well, it might be greater, like to a greater scale. And that you mentioned teachers, it's like there might be also like a sense of how teachers might depend on the CSOs a little bit too much and like call to them for like unnecessary things and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I guess it is like to a greater scale.
Right. What about for y'all? Like,
I guess for me, from coming from like an experience of like going to different clubs and hearing what people like hearing what different kind of classmates say, there's always like, I mean, I bring up again like the fact that the students and the school have like this big disparity in communication, and how some students want this but the school doesn't want that, right? I think one of the biggest recent things that happened was a bunch of students, organized a petition to lower the school to a minimum schedule, right, to about 12:20 or 12:30. A lot of people signed that, parents, students included, right? Of course, the faculty, not the faculty, but the school administration said no because it undercuts them and it ruins the school system, right? And I think the fact that that even though that we're in COVID-19, we're in a pandemic, right? And there's a lot of like issues going on that are very like different. Well, not necessarily that they're new, but they're definitely things that people haven't just heard about just until recently. Is the fact that they're not changing their curriculum to suit the times, and it kind of shows that, right? Because they're staying the same course, they're trying to fit the same school curriculum that they've had, and they're just like pushing it in like circle peg to a square peg, or a circle thing to a square peg, I suppose, and it's just unfeasible, right? A lot of students I know, even in LBCC, they're talking about how hardworking they are and how like the curriculum is a little bit overkill considering their current situation, right? My friends are struggling, my family's struggling. I think everyone is struggling in general, especially if you're not well off or privileged, right? And it just doesn't feel right, I feel like students should have the right to have an opinion and to have a say in school matters, but the fact that the school administration is to the point of like autocratically like dictating what the students should have, even though the students should at least have some say, even if they disagree, that students know what students want, and if they're not going to listen to what students really like want in their education and what they desire, like different classes, different curriculum, then to me that's a very flawed like system and a flawed education curriculum for sure.
Yeah. Going off of what Alvin was talking about, like the communication between students and faculty, I'd have to agree with that. I think that there is a lapse with what the students want, what admin wants, faculty. I remember there was an incident that happened at Poly February of this year where a teacher used a racial slur on a student, and there was a whole thing that went down, and some teachers were trying to have open conversation with the students about, and the students also wanted to have open conversation with their teachers about race and about what it means, what this word means, and administration didn't want that, and they were trying to shut it down. I was looking at a paper on an article from my school's newspaper, and I got an email from a teacher, and the email was sent out to all the staff, and it said, don't talk about this, let's not talk to the students about what happened. Let's they didn't want to have any conversation, and I think it's really wrong to not give students a seat at the table when it's students who make up the entire 90% of the school.
Right. Sorry, were you gonna?
Yeah, can I add?
Yeah, go for it.
And that wasn't even like an isolated case, because prior to that, I was also on the school newspaper. There was an issue where something happened. There was like a lot of cops in the school, and it happened like towards one building, and so an email was sent to teachers saying, don't let your students out like during a certain time period. And then they sent one where, now you can let them go out. And like, that was sent only to teachers. There was no explanation like as to why they had to keep their students in or out. And I tried to talk to administration and be like, well, what was this about? And again, it's like, they didn't say anything. They couldn't say anything.
And how does that make you guys feel, like going to a school where maybe information is like withheld from you all?
Yeah, well, actually, the only way I've received that email was from a teacher who trusted me enough, and he was sure. The teacher was sure to be like, "Hey, don't put me in this." And that was the only way I was able to get a hold of that email. And I feel like it's really disgusting that we have to jump through loopholes, and we have to like as student journalists, we have to jump through these loopholes to try and get this information, to give it to other students. And that admin faculty, and then tries so hard to cover everything up. And there needs to be open discussion, like, hey, this is what happened, right? This is why we are on lockdown. This is why we're not able to leave. This is why police, came to school. Because it really does freak some students out. It freaks me out as well. And it's like, it's not right to just, you can't just put a cover over a fire, right? You don't just throw a blanket over and just expect the fire to go out.
Right. And that kind of thing probably impacts like your education too,
Yeah.
right? So what, there was some discussion about like students should have like a seat at the table. What would that look like to actually have one? Because there's certainly different forms of looking like you have a seat at the table and then actually having one where, your words matter, right?
Mm-hmm.
What would that look like to have like a meaningful representation?
I mean, well, first of all, one, just for like the to be fair here, technically we do. We have the student union, right? That student union, quote unquote, air quotes, right? Unfortunately, it's just all it really is. It's just a glorified calendar group, and all they do is just like, hey, here's the subject for the new prom or new dance, right? But there's no actual grievance policy. There's no saying like, hey, I have a problem with the school. Could I bring it up? Like, you could try. Like, definitely not gonna go through, right? That's why I'm like, that's why I'm bringing up the importance of actually the importance of kind of like allowing for students to form actual unions, actual student unions. I'm pretty sure by the Constitution it's legal, and it's by a law to a degree that for us to form some form of student union, right? And I feel like if the school were to be nice, right, and to be caring, it could begin the relationship of faculty to administration to students in a manner that's fair. And while it might not necessarily be of course the final step, it's definitely a way for us to have a conversation as a collective, as a union, right, of students to at least have their grievances shown, like, hey, we want these classes, we want these and that, right? And the importance of a union is, of course, to organize. And I think like allowing the school to kind of like, I guess, allow their students to have it would be definitely a positive,
Right. And so I guess the same with y'all, like what would like actual meaningful student representation look like?
Well, actually having conversations with the students, especially like from the student journalist perspective, like if we're out here asking questions, we're trying to inform our fellow students, like talk with us, have this conversation. Another issue I've spoken about with like other peers is like the school board meetings and how like if they're deciding things that are going to affect students, why aren't students actually there? Like some sort of representation and good representation for students in these meetings themselves.
Yeah, I have to agree with what Briana said. It's definitely representation, giving us a seat at the table, like allowing us to be at these important meetings where decisions directly affect us. And I remember after that whole incident at Poly went down, we had like some teachers hosted like an open forum where it was like, talk to us about your issues, tell us what you're thinking of. And I think it's one thing to do that and say like, okay, what are you guys dealing with? And it's another thing to take those issues and actually act upon them and actually, make changes for the better. So.
Right. And, I don't know if this is how y'all feel, but in my experience, like, there's generally the sense toward younger people that like, oh, you're not as experienced, you don't know as much, and so your opinions are like less valid. Is that like something y'all have felt? Like, it kind of sounds like it.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's definitely like the sense you've gotten, but like in what settings? Like schools, right? Like is that
Anywhere where like everyone's older in general,
yeah,
there's a bit of that ageism kicking in.
right. That
Yeah.
like reverse ageism in a way. Right?
Yeah.
Interesting. How does that like make y'all feel about even wanting to like participate or speak up?
It feels like you have to put way more effort than you usually have to. You have to like prove to people that you're mature. I know that's generally the feel for a lot of other folks here. So.
Right.
And it's also like this strange position where like you need to act like you're better than your peers in order to be taken seriously. Like you're more mature. Like that's why I can speak out on these things. And it's like, it's not like that. We're all capable of thinking and speaking about the issues that we care about.
Right.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think it's sometimes it could get very discouraging because it's like, well, maybe I don't know enough. Maybe I am not like well educated, or my parents always told me like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, we have 50 years of experience. You have 18, and it's like, yeah, it kind of gives me a sense of like, okay, I need to, yeah, like what Briana said, like I need to act, better. And it's like that's not the case. No matter who we are, we all have different experiences, and we all, have something to contribute. And if we do have something to contribute, we should be able to share that, and it should be taken into account.
Right. On that note, and also like how the pandemic is shaping school, if y'all could talk about a little bit, just let people know, like what your experience in schooling has been like. I know we're all Cal State Long Beach students, so it might be a little different than like LB Unified. But like, what is your experience with like, I guess the Zoom school been like, and how could it change for the better if you feel like that's needed?
Do you want me to
Whoever.
go?
Let's go.
Yeah, I can start off. Well, as a CSU LB student, we tend to have a lot more leeway. I think a lot of our teachers are very more willing to accommodate, fortunately, right? And that's just coming from the CSU LB experience. I can actually talk a little bit about LBCC since I do, have friends there and they tell me a lot of things. So it's very restricting from what I've heard. It's way more difficult in terms of classes. From just one of my friends, like they've told me like that fact that they didn't really change the curriculum from the last semester. I'm actually not sure how LBCC does it completely, but they basically said the last semester that nothing really changed and they didn't really accommodate that as much. And for them, it's definitely stressful. A lot of my friends in LBCC compared to Cal State are definitely more worked up from it, but and also the fact that there's a lot of there's this kind of like online system that they have that kind of like basically hacks your computer in a nutshell. It's like it's an app where when you go in, it basically takes control of your computer for that time allotted, and it's what the school currently uses in in Cabrillo or in Poly, and also what LBCC uses it, right? And my friend who's a big tech geek told me that it's very infringing and slow, and it's very sus because they can see a lot of the stuff that's outside your computer to prevent you from cheating. While I understand the reasoning, it doesn't feel fair because there's more than just cheating on your computer. And as someone that's in the Cal State system, I don't have that because we have to do an honor system and we follow that to a point, right? And just hearing about that feels very Orwellian, and it kind of makes me just go, I don't know, but the teachers or this school taking over my computer because I have stuff there, and if they if let's just say the school gets hacked, like my data could be like stolen, sold, and I don't want that to happen. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, one of the things I want to touch on for the Long Beach Unified system, because and it's kind of the same for some of my classes at Cal State Long Beach, where it's like you have to check in at like a certain time. And I know for Long Beach, like their classes for like high school, middle school, elementary, their classes are all like already set out. So like from like 7:50 to 2:40, you're basically sitting in your room like locked in. And for me, it raises concerns because like these times are not normal, right? There are things that happen, and whatever, your schedule is fluctuating. It's not like every day, 5 days a week, I have the time to sit down from 7:50 to 2:40 and do all my classes, right? Things happen. And I think that that's something that kind of made me question it and be like, well, why are they making students do this? And just the fact that, for me, I've experienced personally, it's really hard for me to stay focused and stay determined to get my work done when I'm just sitting in my room. I'm kind of upset that I'm also paying full tuition for sitting in my room, right? Like I'm not using any of the any of the facilities that CSULB offers me. I don't have access to the gym, right? I can't really like go on campus or anything. So why am I paying full tuition to do that? That was also something that really like, why, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Keep in mind we pay about $3K per semester, and we don't even get the gym. We don't get all the other benefits. Yeah, sure, we might get the scholar stuff, but
Yeah, the issue of tuition, it's a lot of other like CSULB students are like, why are we paying full tuition? We're like, we're not getting like the full education. So it's like that. But for Long Beach Unified, like I have a younger sister in middle school, and I can see her struggling. It's like Nick said, they're from like 7 to like 3, like at the computer, and it's like these are like hour-long classes or like more than that, and they're kids. It's like, and I don't understand why they're holding them to the same standards prior to the pandemic when we're in a pandemic. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, they're not willing to like they're not willing to change in order to accommodate the students, and it's not fair.
Yeah. And what worries me the most is like the kids who, these are some of their formative years of like learning how to socialize and learning how to, making friends. And I know when I was a kid, like recess and like being with other people was very important to me and like my mental well-being. So I just feel so bad for the kids who are just stuck at, like elementary age kids who are just now stuck at home in front of their computer, and they can't really go out or make friends or, talk to other people or have that setting where it's like, it's hard.
Right. So then, we've been talking about like certainly a lot of issues, like pretty negative things, right, that impact like your development, your experience growing up here. But like, how do we change some of those things? Like how could we make these things better for y'all, for your siblings, your friends, at school, at home, and like in your communities? Like what, I guess, would like a better, safer, maybe healthier community look like for y'all?
Well, what students have already said they wanted, to stick to the minimum day schedule. That's something students have put out there as like something it's doable, and it will help them. Because in the beginning of when like the first weeks of school, they did go by the minimum day schedule, and it was really different from what they're doing now. And like I could even see like she's way more tired now, my sister. So like they're saying like, we can just stick to the minimum day schedule. And so that's a way to create change, but again, it's not really happening. But
Right.
I definitely think, well, first one, give students a seat at the table. 2, like allow like students to have this ability to organize and promote that organization, right? Like the promotion of student unions can do a lot to like actually, vocalize the spirit of the students. And 3, I guess accommodate for the pandemic. If you're not going to accommodate, it's not going to go anywhere far, because these students have lives. And if you're going to put like, I guess the equivalent would be like, if you're going to put grades over people, then I think that's not necessarily like a good thing. And it's definitely not a very humane way of doing things.
Yeah, I actually really like what Briana said about you can't hold these students to the same standards before the pandemic, because once again, before the pandemic, I'm actually sitting in a class, and I'm actually talking with other people. Before the pandemic, students had all these resources, and now these things are all stripped away. So I would just say, don't hold these kids to the same standards as they were being held to before.
Right. And what about like at home, right? Or like at your communities, like outside of that school environment? You all spoke about a lot of issues that kind of affect whether you choose to hang out there or not. Like, how could the conditions in those areas be improved? Like, what do you want to see done?
it's hard to say. Like I can't even imagine it. It's that thing of like, it's been this way for so long. Like, it's hard to even like think. But I don't know. I mean, community-wise, I just feel like, for example, like if we feel unsafe and like that has something to do like with crime rates and things like that. I like believe in that, like you should deal with that like at the stem of it, you know, like have more resources available for the community, mental health resources, things like that, so people don't have to turn to crime. I feel like that would help the community be safer.
Well, I'd say for me, I don't really have much to talk about for my community, but I'd say definitely funding. You know, allocating funds towards other communities where people don't feel as safe, and you know, figure out why don't you feel safe? Like, what's going on here? Why don't you want to, you know, hang out with your friends in this area? And give funding and, you know, fix that.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree also with Briana that there isn't a lot of like, I can't really think of a solution that honestly fixes everything that I can like imagine, because it's definitely systemic. It's definitely something that the only way to fix it is if you like cut off the stems, and unfortunately, that isn't possible for a lot of reasons, right? But I do think that the big important thing is that the community is aware and the community remains active, and only through the ability of like the community being politically aware of the situation at hand is, I think, the best probable step forward to more radical change in society, especially around these times. So.
Right. Okay. And you know, as we come to a close here, I don't know if there's maybe like just anything else that you want to add or throw out there, like just to share with Long Beach, you know, with anyone who might be watching, kind of as we close down, or no, or even just like promote your work or something like that.
I guess just to add that youth have proven that they're like active in their communities and they want change, and they're willing to like actually do things to create the change, and to just give them a chance, give them resources.
Right. Okay. Well, you know, we're gonna bring this to a close. I don't know if you guys want to maybe like say promote where people can follow your work or anything like that. Shout out any social media.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can follow voicewaves.org, but do you want to follow them individually?
Sure. My name's Ceferino Martirez, of course. You can follow me on Instagram at Alvinistic. Just put AL bracket Vinistic. And you know, West Side represent, right? Yeah, and I guess most of my work tends to very much be about covering specific. I do specifically photojournalism, so most of my coverage tends to be about protest or events or specifically, you know, people. So.
I'm sorry, just a quick correction. It's Al_Vinistic.
Oh, right, yeah, apologies.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's all good.
Go ahead. If anyone else would like to.
Yeah, so if you want to check me out on Instagram, it's at Nick_Eismann, EISMANN. I kind of do a lot of the stuff that Alvin does, just photojournalism work. I've spent the past few months following the Black Lives Matter protest as well. So if you want to see some of that stuff, I'll be sure to give me a follow.
Yeah, I'm Briana, and most of my work is mostly going to be on the VoiceWaves page, so follow me there. I'm passionate about education and equitable access to it and stuff like that, so that's what I tend to report on. And yeah.
Right. And you know, just as someone who has worked with these folks and is editing their work now, like, gotta say, you definitely should follow all of them, because as you've heard, they're all really smart, you know, really intelligent, got a lot of good ideas. And it shows in their reporting too, and their storytelling. So, you know, hit them up on their specific social medias that they've shouted out, and you can follow their work and really our entire organization's work at voicewaves.org. It's where you can see like all the reports by our young people here from Long Beach about all the things happening in their communities, their schools, their personal stories, and you can even hit us up if you want to, you know, join or just share your own story. But thank you for tuning in. My name is Carlos, and for everyone else here, we're just going to close out. Thank you for joining us.